All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Saturday, September 28th, 2024. This is your afternoon update on the tropical Atlantic basin here this afternoon. We are watching our area in the Caribbean. We have another system that's going to be following on the heels of Hurricane Helene's destruction. Obviously, that's still in the forefront of everybody's mind. Helene wrought a path of devastation from Florida all the way up into the Carolinas, where some of the worst flooding and natural disasters have occurred on modern record in some areas. Up to 30 inches of rain fell across North Carolina with wind gusts in the mountains up to 140 miles per hour. At least 52 people have been killed from Florida to the Carolinas and Tennessee associated with Helene. And obviously, that's on the forefront of everybody's mind right now. But unfortunately, we don't get to rest at all because we are watching the potential for another system trying to form in the Caribbean that may also threaten the Gulf of Mexico and or Florida and even the Southeast U.S. writ large going into next week. So that's going to be the primary focus of our video today. But we do have some other areas in the Atlantic basin. They're not really worth talking about. Hurricane Isaac moving away. Absolutely no threat to the U.S. Joyce going to get pulled up by a cold front and absorbed in a couple of days. No threat to the U.S. And this system following Joyce may also develop. But right now, indications are this may also wind up recurving. It's very late in the year to get something off Africa moving all the way across the Atlantic basin without getting picked up by a front. So for now, we're not going to treat that as anything serious of a threat. So our focus then turns to the Western Caribbean. Afternoon update from the National Hurricane Center at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We have a 50% chance of development in the next 7 days, still 0% in the next 48 hours. So what we have is a slowly developing pattern that may very well spawn one or two storms in the next couple of days. Now, I say two because it may be confusing when you look at these maps, and it may look like the models are all over the place, but really we're probably going to have two distinct storms come out of this pattern. One's going to be associated with a tropical wave moving by Haiti right now, and the other one will be as that tropical wave leaves, we will have a pattern that will likely spawn a second storm. So let's kind of show you what this looks like. Look at the Hurricane Center's current analysis. We'll zoom in just a little bit here. They have a tropical wave analyzed very close to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This is moving generally to the west, steered by strong high pressure over the Bahamas and off the coast of Florida. That's pushing everything along quickly to the west, okay? So this wave is showing up right here on our satellite, and this is going to move into this region of already very disturbed weather. This is still a disturbed weather pattern. There's still a basic, what we call CAG or Central American gyre circulation in this area, and we have portions of the monsoon trough kind of disturbed. It's all a very upset, boiling, just messy weather pattern, okay? So this tropical wave is not going to develop before it makes it to the Yucatan Peninsula. This is going to move pretty quickly across the Yucatan and across. Now, some computer models do develop this wave into the southern Gulf of Mexico / Bay of Campeche, but the indications are right now that the pressure will be too high for that to be able to really go anywhere. It may just fester, or it may just drift into Mexico and not be a threat. What that wave does do, though, is as that moves out, it starts to pull some of this energy up out of South America and South Central America, and the high pressure over the Bahamas begins to relent in terms of wind shear, and it begins to orient more offshore, and this opens up a area of breathing room for the Caribbean Sea. So we'll go ahead and show you what this looks like on our GFS model. We'll back up a little bit here and show you that wave. So if you look right here on the map this morning, our tropical wave moves really quick across, and I'm just mentioning this part of the system just because it may be confusing when you look at models and stuff to see more than one storm, and this is why. That wave moves into the Yucatan by Monday afternoon, but notice as that wave moves by, so you see it near Jamaica, it's moving west, it moves towards Jamaica, or towards the Yucatan, okay, so this is the wave. But notice as the wave moves out, we start seeing development down here in the southern Caribbean. That's because it kind of pulls that tropical moisture and kind of provides lift as it departs for that monsoon trough to begin to orient more upright. And as it does so, it likely will be able to acquire some more vorticity and begin to rotate, and that's where we may get a storm beginning to take shape from. So This wave moves across into the Bay of Campeche, and this storm begins to move northwest. Now, from here, this is where we have our first kind of real decision point, is how fast does something form? The GFS, for example, shows a small core of winds forming as early as Monday afternoon. Now, right now, that would be still unlikely because the Hurricane Center has through 48 hours near 0%. That means that this model probably overshooting how fast the system would develop. Of course, the European model, our counterpart, has nothing for like the entire time here, so we can't really use the Euro to sniff this out. So we're going to run with the GFS, but we're going to take it with a grain of salt, okay? So we move this along. We have a system developing going into Tuesday, into Wednesday, and then by Wednesday afternoon, it almost looks like we have our 2 and even possibly 3 storms, a Eastern Pacific storm, which remember we had John and we had Helene about the same time. Wouldn't shock me to see an Eastern Pacific storm spin up at the same time, but we have this tropical wave that finally tries to develop in the southern Caribbean, the southern Gulf of Mexico, rather. And then our system, the one to actually watch, one of these will be Kirk, one of these will be Leslie, probably, maybe even the third name, because our guy way out here might get a name. So the names are TBD right now, just, Storm 1, Storm 2, Redfish, Bluefish, whatever. But as we keep going on our model here, we see that the system continues to move to the northwest, guided by high pressure. High pressure should pretty much keep this moving west until about mid to late week. Our one system looks like it's pretty close to Gulf of Mexico or Mexican coastline, not really a threat. But our main system here clips the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula and then actually rides a bit west for the next couple of days as high pressure still controls most of the southeast U.S. But the problem is as we get into Friday, things begin to quickly change upstream where our next weather pattern is coming in. So if I go ahead and take a look at the upper air pattern going into Saturday morning or late Friday night, rather, we have 3 different indications from 3 different models in the upper levels that a trough will be coming into parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and moving across the southeast U.S. as we have a very kind of chaotic upper jet stream pattern and probably going to have some kind of split jet feature where we have, portions of the subtropical and the polar front jet moving in. What does this all mean? Basically, something is going to kind of come down and try to pick this up, a frontal system, if you will, an upper trough, whatever you want to call it. Not the same setup that Helene had, a different kind of setup, but still the same basic idea that an upper weather feature is going to try to grab this and move it north. It's very common this time of year. This is October. These weather features are a lot more common. They're a lot more prevalent. It's no surprise that a storm going into the Gulf of Mexico would move one direction and then begin to rapidly snap back as a front shows up. But models have good agreement in this general pattern. All 3 models that can reach this far, the GFS, Euro, and CMC, who have all performed pretty well in terms of upper air structure, all 3 have this trough somewhere around Texas and Oklahoma on Friday at 0. Friday night, early Saturday. The 0Z thing is always confusing, but this is Friday night or the beginning of Saturday in Zulu time. And it shows the storm in the Gulf of Mexico, at least on the CMC and on the GFS. But you can see there's pretty stark differences in where the storm goes initially. The GFS is a bit more west. The CMC starts more east and finishes more east. And then we'll show you what happens from there. The GFS does eventually recurve this to the east and moves it in near Pensacola, just past Mobile Bay, and then moves into the southeast U.S. from there. And the CMC, for whatever it's worth, again, it stays more right to the beginning of that. It comes in more on the western tip of Cuba. Notice how on Thursday, that's near the western tip of Cuba. But if I take this model back to Thursday, notice how far apart those models are just in that short term. Well, then the GFS moves it further west while the CMC turns more due north. This one, unfortunately, brings it right into the Big Bend of Florida, just same places that just got hit by Helene, and moves across Florida. This would be a big deal, obviously, for northern Florida from the Big Bend to Jacksonville, Orlando, Melbourne. All you guys would be in on some pretty bad weather as this came through. Whereas the GFS comes in further west, more towards Panama City or Destin or Fort Walton or even Pensacola, and then moves up from there. Now, those are just 2 of many solutions. Our computer models are going to see a range of solutions. The GFS, again, showing you those clear 2 camps right here. But then as I go ahead and step this out longer, we go into 7 days from now, definitely a huge bloom of potential. So no one across the Gulf Coast is safe from this yet. I think the upper Gulf Coast, more towards Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana should be watching this. Hell, even Texas should. I'm not 100% convinced that trough is going to be there exactly how we see it. I think that eventually a trough would show up before this got into western Louisiana or Texas, I think. But it's a very strange little pattern coming upstream. It doesn't really reflect much at 500 or 700 millibars. So I'm a little skeptical. I want to see some more models, obviously, before we start making any sort of calls. And again, we're 7 to 9 days out. We're not making calls regardless. But just be aware that we do have another storm. It's probably going to move up in the same basic pattern that Helene did, and then it will likely recurve at some point towards the Gulf Coast, whether it's, central Gulf Coast, central eastern Gulf Coast, or Florida. We just don't know yet. We really don't know. But everyone in this region should be prepared for the potential of another tropical storm or hurricane very possible. Going into probably that Sunday to Monday timeframe, so late next weekend, we could have something else to be talking about. And we will, of course, be tracking it. I was hoping to take it some time off and relax a little bit, but you guys know I'll be here. We'll be tracking it every step of the way, and we'll just take this as it comes, just like we did with Helene. That's all we can do. So until then, guys, that's what I got for you today. We'll have more as this develops. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.